everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Fiddle. Today we are continuing with the tiny furniture for the tiny house. We're going to be making the clock and a round coffee table. And don't forget to check the link in the description box that's labeled Scavenger Hunt. That would take you to Patreon, where you'll find a list of materials and the printable pattern that you can use to make these pieces for yourself. And speaking of the pattern, I did not include this table on it. However, you can trace a dime to get the right size circle you need. I use the end of my blade keeper container, and it's about the size of a dime. If you've got the really fat popsicle sticks, you could just make a circle from the end of one, and that would probably be around the same size. To cut out the circle, I used my easy cutter, then sanded and beveled the edges with a nail file. For the legs, we want them to be about the same length as we did for the couch and chair, and that was just the very end of our fancy-ended toothpicks. And you can always use the couch and chair as a reference, so you can make it the height you want. To glue the legs on, I used tacky glue and super glue, though one or the other will work just fine. It's a little difficult to get in there to sand off the excess glue that I couldn't wipe off, so a coat of paint can cover that up, but I think it turned out pretty well. We have one last piece to make for the downstairs furniture, and that is a grandfather clock. We're going to start with some thin craft wood, or as I mentioned earlier, white popsicle sticks, and trace our pattern out onto them. You should have 6 pieces in all. Once you have all your pieces cut out, we're ready to start gluing. The first 2 pieces will be the back panel and one of the 2 wider pieces. You'll want to glue it close to the edge on the back side, but centered. The next 2 pieces to be glued on are the side panels. They should sit in front of the back panel. The next piece you'll need is the clock face and a piece of wood just smaller than it. You can glue it centered or to the upper half of a long end. I went for the center on mine. This gives us a little bit of a gap between the back of the clock and the face. Next, we're going to flip it over and add a sequin as the clock face. If you wanted something that was not so shiny, or you just wanted to use this as a trim, you could take a hole punch and use the circle and glue it into the center. Set it aside to dry, and we're going to start working on the chains. For this, you'll need your choice of tiny beads and a bit of wire. We're going to start by making the middle pendulum first, and for this I used a tiny brown seed bead and a metal gold bead. Using your pliers, make a loop at one end of your wire. Add your beads, then at the other end, leaving enough excess, make another loop. Bend one of the loops to sit flat along the bottom of the bead. If you had any jewelry finding posts, those would work good for this too, because it's essentially the same thing. Now we're ready to add this to our chain. Using your pliers, open up your end loop just enough that you can slip the chain on, then close the loop. Now you're ready to cut your chain to whatever length you want. Remember to consider a link or 2 for gluing to the back of the clock. When you have your chain cut to the length you want, use tacky or E6000 on the back of the clock and attach your chain to the center. Using a glue with a longer drying time allows you to move it into place so it's set where you want. Then come back with super glue to set it in place. I didn't add beads to the chains on either side. They took up too much space inside the cabinet, so I just added chains themselves. If you wanted to give it a coat of paint, this would be a good time. I left mine light because the flooring in my room is dark. Once our pieces are dry, we can slip the clock face into place. Originally for the front of the clock, I wanted to use this little cardboard piece I had cut out, but after testing it, it didn't look right and it hid the pendulums. Instead, I went for just a clear piece of plastic. You could add trim around the front edges if you wanted to make it look more like a door. The last thing we need to do is add the top. I think there is enough clearance in the tiny house that if you wanted to add some feet to this, you would be able to. And with that, it brings us to the end of our tutorial. Next, we will be doing the bed and curtains, and that will be the last episode for the tiny house series. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, as it really helps me out a lot. Thank you, Ginger, and I'll see you next time.